Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout, sponsored by Create From Y and our Lean Into It motorcycle retreat in May 2023, taking first responders, business professionals for 7 days and really recharging, growing, and connecting. Today we have a special guest from Utah, and I have been on his podcast, so now he's coming over here to be on ours and tell us all about his fight with burnout and how he overcomes and prevents it every single day. He is a fire captain and SWAT medic, so it's going to be a good interview, and I'm looking forward to it. Today we have Jerry Lund. As I always like to do, Jerry, I like to just leave it and give it over to you to introduce yourself because you know yourself better than I do, and I could ramble on and stuff, and I'll probably get it wrong. And better to
Ah,
let
you're
you kind of
good.
tell us your story. Tell us a little bit about how you got into doing what you're doing, and briefly the journey so far.
Yeah. So I got into EMS actually about 33 years ago. I started EMT class and I was in an accident after that, shortly after that. And so the ambulance service that picked me up was from the city I lived in and they were volunteer. And so they said, "Hey, you don't want a job?" And I'm like, "Yeah, cool. I'll take a job." It's, volunteer. It's great. So that kind of got me started. And then about 10 years later, now probably about 8 years later, I joined the fire department in the same town, both volunteer. So it was a little bit challenging to both run fire and medical calls from a pager. And about 23 years ago, I went full time fire in a city just south of Salt Lake City. And there I went through the police academy to be a fire investigator. And I transitioned from that department to the department I'm at now. So about 30 miles south of Salt Lake City. So my full-time job, so to speak, is I'm a fire captain and paramedic. And we're just a smaller department, about 45,000 people, two-station department. And I have the great opportunity to be a SWAT medic on our SWAT team. So I've been doing that for about 13 years now with the SWAT team. It's been an incredible ride and journey. 33 years in this field takes a toll
Yeah.
on you and your family, as many of you know. And this is perfect way to talk about it. I have three kids of my own. I have three bonus kids. I have two grandkids. So life is busy. I own a couple businesses like Chris. So, we have a lot of things in common and it's easy to get burned out.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Tell us about, well, first off, really tell me, what would you define burnout as? Because I know everybody kind of has their own little definition. Obviously, there's the Webster Dictionary definition of burnout, continual stress and overwhelm. But what would you describe burnout yourself as?
Loss of passion for the job and loss of empathy for the people you come in contact with.
I love that. That's
I
so precise and it's so true what happens when you're burned out.
Unfortunately, it really is. I mean, when you get burned out, you lose the passion for the job, and so it's harder to go to work every day. And then that makes it, I feel, to be it's a lot easier to be less compassionate as you should be, both to your
Yeah.
coworkers and the people you come in contact with professionally.
Now, obviously, you've been doing this for 33 years, way more than my 7.5. But what's your beliefs and what do you think about the trauma of the job having a massive relation to us burning out?
Yeah, I'll go back to this same kind of thing. Is when we're feeling burned out, that trauma just seems to be magnified. Like it just really seems to be, the calls seem to hit you more deeply. And I think that's just, part of burnout is, for me, is also, you're starting to lose yourself and starting to lose your kind of that connection with your mind and body. Like you're starting to physically be burned out and mentally be burned out. So I think, I don't know if that answers your question or. I kind of got lost. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're like, yes, it does.
Yeah.
It was more of, I guess maybe I didn't ask the question quite right, but I love the answer that, yes, it does. We do get affected by the trauma more, and this is my belief that if we can prevent burnout, we can prevent the impact of PTSD, because as you said,
Right.
it affects
Yeah.
us so much more. So that little thing that didn't affect us in the very beginning, all of a sudden throws us off the Richter scales. Uh,
Yeah, definitely. I think to add to that is right our home lives. We can't leave what's happening at home. That's just impossible. I used to think, check your shit at the door type of thing. And that's just not how it is. I think that's how we wanted it to be when I first started into the fire service. Not just check your shit at the door, like your family stuff, but your own personal stuff.
yeah.
Check it at the door and just show up to work and do your job.
And it's so funny because even back when I started, it was kind of that mentality. Some people said it, some people it was insinuated. Whether it was true or
Yeah.
not from them, who knows? But there was a lot of that. Check your stuff at the door. You're here to do a job.
Yeah.
And it's great because you'll get your job done, but it's not great when you actually go pick your shit back up at the door and bring all the
Right.
stuff from work with you, trying to leave that stuff, and it never gets left anyways. Um,
Yeah.
Question: do you believe, obviously in the beginning, I don't know about you, but it's actually fairly difficult to burn out in the job because you love it so much. You're throwing everything
Yeah.
into it, but then we're also seeing that traumas. I don't know when your first one was, but mine was literally my first day. I hadn't even graduated academy or college as we call it here, and they
Hmm.
send you on what's called station duty. You do a week, not sworn, so you don't have any policing powers, but you've got uniform and it says recruit on your shoulders, and you kind of have powers because you're with another cop. But first day went to a guy who had passed away 3 weeks earlier.
Yeah.
First day, I
Yeah.
still cannot smell decay and death since then. My wife has to tell me to put the trash out because I can't. I just don't smell it. My
Yeah.
response to it. But my question for you, doing this for so long and being an EMT and seeing, I take it you guys probably see more death than I think cops a lot of times do. Um, do you believe that, do you feel that the added trauma creates the possibility of burning out? Do you think that the trauma burns you
Hmm.
out over time?
Yeah. I mean, you can never unforget that type of stuff, right? Those type of calls. Like in my first 30 days, I think I saw 12 fatalities. There were some pretty big incidents in those 30 days at a volunteer department. Like, and that was a lot. And everybody's like, "Are you fine?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." I don't really know how else to feel, right? Like, there's no book on like how to feel after you see all this carnage. You just do your job and kind of go home and try not to think about it.
Mm.
But it's definitely a cumulative type of thing. I live in pretty much in the same area I've worked my entire career, so I don't like when I pass things, most often I have memories of like traumatic incidents that happened in those areas. And as soon as you said that about the dead person, I went on a call and it was like, a trailer house in the middle of summer and it was over 100 degrees. And yeah, so the person died on the toilet and then fell into the bathtub and the decay process started. And yeah, you can never unsmell that and never unsee that. And so I think we like to stuff down those, traumas that we see and things like that, but you can only stuff down things for so long. Um, I don't believe you can really go through this career without having some ups and downs and some burnout type, situations. If you are, I'd like to know what you're doing to do that, or maybe you're just not being real with yourself. To be honest, you said something about early in the podcast, and I was just thinking about a guy. Oh, about checking her shit at the door, and a guy I remember talking to a police officer. He says, "Oh yeah, I never like my family life and my work life never interrupt each other." And I'm like, wow, that's impressive because I don't think that's really true. There's got to be like you can't be like you're that's pretty hardwired, I guess, if you're that way. Like I don't know how you can do it.
Yeah, I don't know either unless you have literally like shut your emotions away or you have split personality disorder because it's like you said, you can't forget those things. You can
Yeah,
cope with them, you can have tools and processes in place to go, oh yeah, huh, there's that again.
yeah,
I had that just the other day. I had something pop up in my head and I was like, huh, there's that again. Okay, cool. Now what do I want to do with it? And you can go
right.
through, you get really good at going through that process in a matter of milliseconds. But yeah, I do believe, like you said, it does accumulate up. Tell me, Jerry, tell us about your experience with burnout. What would do you have a time where you're like your biggest like I can with that big breath I can tell
Yeah.
that you're like, yep, I've got it
Yeah,
here. That was the
yeah.
time. Tell us a little bit about that situation, just for learning and
Well, I think over all these years, I think there's been a couple times to be honest, that I felt burned out, and I guess one of them is kind of hit me a little bit different than maybe a normal burnout would hit other people. I got injured on the job,
oh,
suffered a knee injury, was out 500 days,
wow.
type of thing. They're like, hey, you're not coming back to work. Like this is a career-ending injury, and so that really I took it hard, because that's really the only I'm a fireman and police officer, right? That's the only thing I do back then. And it's just all life consuming. So going through that struggle and going through the struggle with admin, to keep my job was a difficult kind of like a burnout stage. For me, like areas that I have like where I feel like I've been burned out is when I've had issues with admin. You go through this line of work. I think most of us will have some issues with admin. Whether they're right or wrong or whatever or how they come about, there's going to be issues in your career, and that's when I think once again accumulative stress, you feel the burnout and you wonder if this job is really worth it. And so does your family, and ask you why you continuing to still do this if you're going through this. And my brother-in-law once told me, he's like, you don't have to win every fight you're in.
No.
And I'm like, yeah, really? I mean,
Yeah, you try
I
and tell a
mean,
cop or a firefighter
yeah,
or EMT, somebody that puts their life on the line every day. Not every fight's worth has to be won. It's like I would fight that.
yeah, 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 yes, yeah. He'd spent 20 years as a police officer himself, and then he got out right at 20 when
Yeah,
he could get out. So he was fortunate, and I think he was in a situation where he was having some issues, probably with admin, and that just is like, why continue to do it longer? Why put
yeah,
yourself through it?
and I think once you get out, you do recognize that actually some of those fights that you kept fighting for, maybe you were even in the wrong, or
Yeah,
maybe they weren't actually worth the pressure you put on yourself to win it. We don't
totally agree.
we don't always have to win those fights. Sometimes actually by letting the person other win, you're actually winning, you know?
I 100% agree with you. It's a learning lesson for sure. You have to learn that. And I think it kind of goes back to like picking your battles and
Yeah.
stuff. Like, you know, you're gonna, no matter what career you're in, you're gonna have battles with your administration. I think there's going to be some disagreements. There hardly ever in a career there's not, right. You're totally two different perspective, different personalities, seeing things different ways. So there is going to be some clash that happens,
Yeah,
and
definitely, definitely.
it's
Go ahead.
I think it's just definitely how you deal with it. I mean, you can let it get to the point where you burn out, or I would uh, see an individual and I would have like anxiety. Like I
Mhm.
really would start to build up anxiety. And I was like, whoa, like this is ridiculous. I can't be like this. That's not healthy for me. It's certainly not healthy for the others around me, because that anxiety creeps up, a lot, during those burnout phases and stuff like that. So I grew, I learned, I learned a lot. Like a lot of this is not always about me. It's
Yeah.
can be about the other person, and that's sometimes what the clash is. It's not about you. It's about what's going on with them.
Yeah, no, that's so true. So 500 days off work, career-ending knee injury. Obviously, that A-type personality, just like myself, with a lot of injuries, and just like so many listeners and viewers out there, I know. We went, okay, cool. I'll take this as a challenge.
Yeah.
I went, you can't tell me no. And so I take it, did you do everything in your power? Well, you're back at work, so I take it you did everything in your power, did everything the doctors said, everything the physios and the specialists,
Yeah.
all of them said that you had to do, and didn't listen to the department and went, screw you, I'm going to do this. But ultimately, it did tend to burn you out. What are some of the things that you recognize looking back on it that show you now that you were burning out?
The thought of committing suicide
Mm,
was the big one. It was a big, huge eye opener for me. Right, we go on lots of suicides in our careers, and I've had close people commit suicide, in my life, and you always wonder how they get to that point, of wanting to take their life, and it's a downward, it's just a spiral that goes downwards. You start looking at life in a negative light, like everything is like raining down on me. Like if I didn't have any bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck at all. I used to think that way all the time, and it was just I turned it and looked and found all the negatives and then it got me into the position where if I can't be this first responder that I want to be, I'm just going to take my life. Um, Luckily, I was about to do that, and believe what you want about the universe and God and stuff like that. I heard my dad's voice that passed about 20 years before, and he told me, "Hey, it's not time." And I didn't. I actually just laid on my bed and pretty much cried myself asleep. And I woke up the next day thinking, "Damn, man, my mental health is broke and my thought process is wrong. And I'm not sure where I picked up all this or learned all this, but I've got to fix it." And so I went on a mission to fix it. And it was not an easy one. And I still, right, as we're in this career, still times that we battle our mental health challenges. But I think those waves and dips that come along are a lot less highs and lows, I would say. And the funny thing is, today or yesterday, I started reading the book that I read and bought online when I was going through all this, because I was like, there's a lot of value in this book that I need to share and get out there and put my own perspective on.
it's so I'm glad you brought that up, and there's so many things right there, and I want to say thank your dad's voice for saying that to you so that you're still
Yeah,
here, because it's so important, and now you're passing it on, and all the things that you're doing, your podcast, your businesses, your all of it, your message is, getting it out there, is telling people that, hey, you don't have to get to this point. And so I love
right.
that. I also love the fact that you're going back and rereading that book that you read at that time, because how far are you a bit into it now?
45 pages.
45 pages in. I'm sure you picked up different things this time than you did last
Oh
time.
yeah. Oh
It's why
yeah.
I do the same courses over again. Like, I'll do them again and I'll be like, or I'll go to events that I've been to before and I'll be like, oh, whoa, okay, cool. Because you see it in a different perspective. You see it through a different lens because you've grown
Yes.
since then. So I love that. I love that you've recognized that. Wow. So first, it's a common thing that I hear having these interviews with people, and talking to lots of people that got to where you did, well, where we did.
Hmm.
I wasn't far off of it. I just would for the listeners that don't know, I would push myself on my motorcycle harder than I actually had the skill level to. Not in
Right.
a learning capacity, but in a I don't care what happens capacity.
Hmm.
Um, but I never got to that where, where I was sitting there going, okay, I'm done, I'm out. I wanted to run away, but as we know, wanting to run away from everything, even yourself,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
literally not even a step off of that point.
Right.
Why do you think it was your dad's voice?
That is a great question. And I've only heard his voice twice since he's passed. Once I was just randomly camping, and it was shortly after his death, and he, like, when you lose a parent or some spouse or something, like, you think a lot about them, and like there's constantly things reminding you about them. And I just remember laying in my tent and being like, whoa, like that was his voice just telling me he was going to be okay. It was very brief, like, you know and I'm not sure why at that time. Probably because he's one of the people that have had their like greatest impact in my life. Like, he set a great example for me, the man he was. And
Hmm.
so I think that's probably like the strongest person that maybe would come through, to like, hey, you know wake up and get back on a journey to better yourself.
I love that. It's yeah, very very important. What did you do first? So the first next morning, you said you woke up and went, "This is no more." What did you do first? What was the first action that you took?
I went to the my office that I had set up in another room, and I just started searching the internet about, like, I think that's just, I felt like I was just broken. Like, my mindset was just broken. And so I was just started researching all this stuff, and I was just come to realize, like, a lot of how we get into a certain phase or mindset of our is by what we're putting into it.
Yeah.
um I was being off for 500 days. I would like watching CNN and watching some murder trial, and it was just like, so I was putting a lot of like not wholesome good things into me, and I just started like, okay, I'm gonna start watching these YouTube videos or these different messages by these people that were out there. And so that started building me up, and I started like realizing that I could change. Like, this was the low, but everything from here on out is going to be something that uplifts me. So I just started like trying to rewire my brain and understand, and I've been on a journey ever since. I love neuroscience,
Yeah.
like why we do what we do, and how our brain basically is a lot of times they're just kind of like screw us up.
Yep.
I was just, we're so, our subconscious is so fast to react, like, over our conscious thoughts. So I always say you can't control your first thought, but you definitely control your second thought. So it's just a lot of like trying to rewire my brain. So I was just ordering books and listening to things to like rewire my brain.
I love that. What was thinking back on that time? What was the number one book or person that you listened to that you feel impacted the most?
It's called A Bug Free Mind.
A bug-free mind. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's written by an author. Shoot, he is his name is Andy Shaw.
Bug-free love.
And unfortunately, I like had this subscription to the website and everything to get on there, and he's like no longer like around. His books are still selling, but I'm not sure what's happened to him.
Huh.
That's a
Interesting.
two-part book. It's like, one is kind of like rewiring your brain and getting your mental thought process, and the other one is kind of just how to basically look at your future, and not just look at your future, but live in the present, and still changing your thought process of like what you can get out of life if you change your thought process.
What would you say the 2 to 3 key things that you still do to this day that you got from that book?
One is just look for the positives in life. And definitely like change the way I feel about luck.
Hmm.
Instead of feeling unlucky, I've got to feel like I am lucky. Like, I'm lucky to be alive. Like, look around, all these things that happen in your life that sometimes are bad are still lucky breaks.
Hmm.
It's hard to find that in some of the tragic situations, but down the road things will play out into some luck.
Hmm.
And this the second part of this book that I'm really like interested in is talk about kind of like manifesting your future. And I know manifesting is kind of like oh, that's pretty far out
The
there.
foo-fooey type topic,
Yeah.
but trust
But
me,
once you
create a
start like,
vision.
yeah, yeah, it's it's more like just it is kind of creating a vision. Like you're putting down a vision. I put it down on paper. I recently been doing a lot of journaling, putting it down on paper. Since I've done that, I've felt like my mood's improved.
Yeah.
Um, the way I handle things is getting better. So I think that was another kind of takeaway from the book is just like getting things out onto paper. Like
Mm,
once you get your feelings out onto paper, man, it's just releasing that emotion that's
yeah.
trapped up inside you. And like I said, manifesting your future is just basically taking your future into your own hands.
Yeah.
And if you think it's a woo-woo type of thing or whatever, like look at the science behind it. There's a lot of science coming out of behind it.
You write a vision or a manifestation down, and then you take one action towards it, your mind instantly starts to go, okay, cool, how do I make this happen?
Mm-hmm. It
You
starts
know,
looking for other ways, right, to make it happen.
you put that physiology or that action behind it. You have the focus, you have the language of using the positive language, like you said, the positive language. Tony Robbins, he wears
Yeah.
that live lucky hat all the time. I've got one as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that, we live lucky. Everything, life in it happens for us. You have that
Mm-hmm.
focus, you have that language, then you write it down, you put the action behind it. It just all of a sudden, your body starts to make it happen. And that's why
Right.
manifestation does work, because you start to create the vision that you want. It's one of the biggest things I have my the clients that want to join the police force do. Create that vision and then
Yeah.
run towards it.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
I
know?
mean, you can, yeah, I have a vision board. It's up in my bathroom. Like I look at it, like these cues, right? I'm cueing my brain and things into look for those things, those
Yeah,
opportunities,
to make it happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
to make it happen.
Put it at the forefront of your brain. I love that. Real quick, Jerry, when was that fateful day that you heard your dad?
Oh, it was a couple weeks before Christmas, actually.
What year?
Let me think on that for a second. Um, 2014, I think it
Uh-huh.
was.
The reason I just ask is because,
Yeah,
going from there to here, kind of, so people can kind of get an idea of timeline. These things don't happen overnight. There
yeah,
are different techniques and stuff like that that will be like, yep, it'll be life changing. You won't ever bounce back past it. It's like that resistance wall. It kind of keeps moving forward.
sure.
But to get to a stage where you and I are, where it's like things happen for us, we manifest. It does take work, and I don't want people to think, oh, I can just start doing this, because then they get disheartened when it doesn't. Oh, I don't feel better instantly. It took me a
Yeah,
year and a half to feel somewhat like I was me again, and that was massive immersion things. I don't know about you, but
yeah,
it
yeah.
took me a while to go, okay, I'm in control of what I call the demon. I used to say
Mm-hmm.
my analogy all the time, and this is why my business is called Knocking Demon Limited. And it came up with it on my motorcycle trip that I ran, that I did, because I was in it. I was like, fuck, demon, just piss off. Like,
Yeah,
I get you, I can hear you, but just leave me alone. And
right.
so, literally, what I started doing from that day on is I visualized, again, manifested this and visualized this image of this demon on the other side of this ballistic door with all these pins and locks and chains and everything. And every tool that I got was just more armor to build it up. I could
Mm-hmm.
hear through it, hear him, and acknowledge him, but he couldn't push me around.
Right.
And it took me a good year and a half from that day to be able to go, actually, you know what? All these tools, I can set them in the room, and I can actually open the door. And I can
Yeah.
actually look at him and start going, dude, I get you. I know you're my past pains. Come on in. Let's have a dance.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's still days where I go, motherfucker, get behind the door.
Right. Right. We're all gonna have those. We're all gonna have those days.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's you start building up the momentum. Like
Yeah.
it there's nothing that's really gonna give you like instant results. You can you can get faster results by some of the different tools that are out
Yeah.
there. But you're gonna have to dedicate time to it. And then I know just as humans in our brains, we want the fastest, easiest fix.
Mhm.
And that is just something that doesn't generally work, that's sustainable.
Doesn't stick. Doesn't
Yeah, it
stick.
doesn't stick.
It's like I mean, you've done shooting. Most of the viewers in that have done some sort of shooting or firearms, or
Yeah.
even as an EMT, the first time you do stuff, it's like shooting a gun. When you first pick up a gun, the very first time, you probably didn't even hit the target.
Yeah. Yeah.
With enough practice, you can literally hit the bullet holes back to back on each other.
Yeah.
It takes practice. So I love that. No, Jerry, that's amazing. So I know that you said earlier on, you said about, you had I think what you said, maybe it was your brother-in-law asked you, why do you keep doing this? Why do you
Yeah.
keep putting yourself through this? I love this question. I love the why behind what we do. I
Yeah.
believe you get deep enough, and we talked about this on the, where when you were interviewing me. I believe that when you dig deep enough into that, you actually find your true identity.
Yeah.
And in turn, when you truly find that identity, that knee injury, that loss of the badge, the loss of the gun, the loss of the,
Hmm.
the EMT status, the loss of the fire badge, the loss of any of the what we do, no longer has as big of an impact on us. It'll still have an impact, but it won't have as
Yeah.
big of an impact. We won't feel like we're
Yeah.
completely lost as a human. Mine is so that I can be seen. That is my why, but I rejig it and rechange the language to how am I helping myself and others see ourselves?
Yeah.
Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, that's what I live by. And if I'm helping myself see myself, then cool. If I'm helping somebody else see, and so it gets me to push hard. It gets me to do all these different things.
Yeah.
What would be your answer to your brother-in-law? I know it was a while back that he probably asked
Yeah.
it. If it was it your brother-in-law?
Yeah. It was.
Yeah.
It
He
was. Yeah.
probably it was probably a way different answer back then. If you can remember what it was back then, let us know. Otherwise, what is it now? Like, what have you discovered through this whole journey?
Well, I don't know what my answer was back then. I don't even know if I even responded, to be honest. Because it's like the win every fight, and I was like, it came, he's telling me about that. You don't have to win every fight, and I'm like, well, gosh, I just really want to set an example. You know, um, it's gonna be like, I'll be try to be politically correct. We sometimes we have to stand up for certain things, whether we're right or wrong. If we feel like we have to stand up for things, and I think that's kind of where my mentality was. Like, I just want to stand up for myself, and I want to stand up for others like myself. So that was probably my answer back to him. But really, the why is why I'm staying now. The future is retirement. It's out there for sure, but I'm staying now is for something that actually happened probably about 2 months ago. We went on a structure fire, and my crew's very young. Most of the people there had my engineer has about 7 years on of experience, and then most of my crew had a year and a half on. We went into a structure fire, um, probably one we shouldn't have went in. They didn't do some steps that they should have done to know that they were in as much danger as they were. So the roof collapsed on us. Fortunately, we all got out and weren't hurt. So part of the reason why I'm really staying is, one is just to mentor, pass on my knowledge. I'm not saying I'm a badass by any means, but I know a few things, and I can pass on a few things that maybe make their career safer. And the other thing is the mental health aspect of it. I'm an open book about the mental health. I'm trying to encourage all of them to seek the mental health. Don't wait until there's a problem. Be proactive instead of reactive. So I think, just like in a nutshell, I'm staying just to do a little more mentoring, and I'm still learning from them, which is great. But there'll become a time where it's just my why changes a little bit more, and to focus towards my business side of things.
Mind if we dig a little deeper on it live here?
Sure, love it.
Oh.
Yeah, like I said, I'm an open book. Go ahead.
Obviously, this is what I do. Like, this is what I love
Yeah,
to do is help people really truly articulate their why so that it's no longer muddy as such.
yeah,
And I know the stuff that you're doing is massive, so I'd love to give that kind of assistance. Uh, Why is it important for you to mentor those coming up behind you?
Because I want to empower them and uplift them. Honestly, there's I have a couple of things on my board and on my wall here, and one of them says dedicated to creating personal insight, discovery of inner wisdom, motivation, and growth to empower people to reach their truest potential. And I think by staying, I can help a lot of them reach some of their, truest potential. Like take maybe remove some of those blocks, the self-limiting beliefs that they have, and get them to believe in themselves and achieve that highest potential, which only is going to be just great for the community. And I live here in the community. So the better I can make them or help them become, like that's just going to pay off dividends to me down the road.
Yes.
Selfishly, in some ways, like I live here, they're going to come, they could come to my house for a medical thing or a fire. And
Yeah.
I think just it's a rough career. And I think to have someone mentor you a little bit about what this career field is going to be like is hugely important. You know, I know people are starting to hire coaches before they get into the first
Yeah.
responder world. I think that's an amazing and awesome thing to do because it'll help you be so much more successful. Like you won't be really blindsided by as many things that will happen in your career. You're like, oh, Chris taught me about this. So I've kind of have some guidelines how to handle this when it comes up. So
Hmm.
I think that's just super important.
Why is it important for you to empower people?
I just love seeing people to their truest potential. I love that just watching someone, the light turn on and see them like, damn, I did that. That was awesome. And just another effect on society, right? When
Hmm.
someone reaches their truest potential, they're probably going to reach down and, as I envision it, reach down from the ladder, pull somebody else up to their truest potential instead of shoving people down to make our situation better or make our lives better or make our career status better. Pull people up. That's a true leader.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, I love it. I love it. Why is it important for you to, help those, help them, help them see their truest potential?
It's just, I think back to wiring our brains, right? We're wired sometimes not to see that, not to see the things like in our kids, for example. I love it when they see their potential at something and then you coach them on their potential. Like, yeah, you did a great job. Let's work on some of these things and your potential is going to get even greater. It just helping create that roadmap for them a little bit.
Hmm.
They're going to find their own roadmap, but you're just kind of the guide. And I
Hmm.
think that for me is rewarding. I just, no matter who it is, like, and you talk to, um, that's just really rewarding. Even as simple as rewarding as going to the store. And nowadays, people don't even like say hi to each other. They just like put their AirPods in or whatever and do their shopping and no communication. And the person at the checkout is like just another damn customer, right? Like no one's, I love those engagements.
Hmm.
I engage like, the people that just don't think they're going to get engaged with, I will strike up a conversation with them just to like, hey, you're important. I hope you're having a great day. Like,
Hmm.
thank you for what you do. Everybody does something that makes the world go around.
I love it. I love it. Obviously, you could go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and get to the next level. But I love that you're able to articulate out and the descriptions and the reasons why. Um, Now, Jerry, I know you have got a podcast. You've got different things going on in that. All from this why, from your experiences that have stemmed up for that. Tell us a little bit about that, about the different
Yeah.
things that are going
So
on.
yeah, my podcast is really kind of driven towards the mental health side of things, and it's people who interact with the first responder world. So from moms, dads, other first responders, like the full spectrum, anybody that kind of touches the first responder world, I have on the show and just show their perspective and share their story on how they got through the shit to where they are today. Because I think each person that shares a story, I can pick up on something. Like when I had you on my podcast, there's things I picked up and like, those are great things. Like I've learned from those things. So the podcast is just great about just sharing people's experiences and connecting with other people. I do, coaching. I have a mindset coaching that I do and a relationship coaching that I do. All those things come from my passion, right? Because like most people, I've been in some terrible relationships, and I'm in an amazing relationship, and that didn't come easily, and it doesn't come easily today. And just like on the mindset part of things, like the mindset coaching is just getting people to see their truest potential, helping them see the roadblocks, remove them, you know, as a guide. Like I'm not going to tell you how to do it exactly, but I'm going to guide you. And that's where the true answer that's going to really stick is the one, the answer that the person you're helping is going to find themselves.
I love all that. How do people find or connect with you? Like find your podcast, and also find you to be able to connect with you if they want to learn more or talk to you more.
Yeah, you can find me on social media at Enduring the Badge Podcast on Instagram or on Facebook. And you can find me just personally, just kind of my mentoring stuff as Jerry Fire and Fuel. The That comes from, I have an apparel business that is kind of on the side, and it's kind of tucked away a little bit right now because you can only have so much focus. But yeah, I have owned Fire and Fuel apparel. I've had a kind of a first responder apparel line for let's see, 12 years now,
Oh wow,
since I
wow.
got hurt.
Nice, nice. No, I love it. So go find him. We'll put those into the description down below as well. Go check out the episode where Jerry interviews me. It was so much
Yeah,
fun. It was
definitely.
amazing. It was great to be on there. Last question I have for you, Jerry, before we wrap up. And I like to ask this question of everybody. What would you say your top tip to self happiness is?
Self-care. Self-care, because generally as a first responder, we put that last far too often. And I don't really, no matter what you do for work or service, you have to have that self-care. And self-care can look different for everybody. It just depends on how much time you have. You got to make time. You have to make some sacrifices, and you're gonna have to make some plans to time that out. But self-care is like the hugest thing to happiness to me, because if my cup's not full, how can I give from it? I can't fully give when my cup's not filled up. And that may sound selfish to some, but I promise if you figure out some self-care where it's meditation, having a cup of coffee and reading a book, going for a walk, going to the gym, that all increases your happy endorphins, and then they just radiate from you.
Nah, I love that. That it's all so very true. That self care module is it's where us first responders have the most difficulty, I think.
Yeah, and if we don't do the self-care right, we're going to lead to burnout. And I didn't really do self-care before I got to my situation where I want to take my life, to be honest.
Did you find back then on the self care? I know this is kind of all going off. Don't normally ask this, but did you find with the self care side of stuff and recognizing that you didn't do it, the things that you back then before that day, did you feel like you were doing self care at all? Like, but it actually wasn't filling you up?
Yeah, I thought going to the gym was doing self-care. Just
Mm.
going to the gym, like, and beating it out on the weights, like that was self-care. But that can be self-care in the right mindset.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna.
I was not in the right mindset. Like I was a very negative person,
Mm.
terribly negative.
Did
Um,
you find when you went to the gym, you told like, and I'm projecting my stuff, so take it
yeah.
as it is, and come back with yours. Did you find that when you went to the gym back then, you went to the gym to be better at work?
Yeah, I definitely, and it plays a huge role, right? At work, we never want to be the weak link. right? We'd never want to be the weak link. So that's a huge part of like working out, but that's a different kind of mental space to be in and working out.
Yeah. No, the reason I bring that up is because I go to the gym for myself. But the reason I was going to the gym, the outcome that I wanted was so I
Mm-hmm.
was better at work.
Yeah.
Not so
Yeah.
that I was better in myself, but so I was better at work. So I'd go to the gym and I'd be like, okay, cool. I need to do these weights so that I'm better at work. So I'm
Right.
stronger at work, not just so I'm stronger. And the byproduct is that I'm better at work.
Yeah.
Instead, it
Yeah.
was
That
the
makes a lot of
byproduct
sense.
was I'm better for myself. The focus of it was so I'm better at work. And then the byproduct was myself, whereas it should have been I'm going there for myself and the byproduct is work.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
mindset shift, that
Yeah.
language change.
Right. Right. It's definitely about language and how we speak. Definitely is a huge part of how we live. I do want to say something, Chris, though.
Yeah.
I do want to challenge people to listen to that podcast that you were on because you are going to hear a little bit different side of Chris. I mean, you know Chris pretty well, but I think you're going to like it's a great episode to like get a different perspective of you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm saying more of my stuff instead of grabbing your stuff. So
Yeah, it's
it's always
great. This
different.
is a great these are great opportunities to learn from.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jerry. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the kind words. Any last words before we wrap up?
I think, it's remember that life is a process. There's lots of up and downs in life, and I think the more we can take care of ourselves and put into that self-care or reading books about how to better our lives, self-help, manifestation, all those things that you put in, you may not see like the immediate results, but you're definitely going to see results down the time. And what I noticed in my life was instead of these big huge waves of like life happening, the ups and downs were not so massive. Like they were, it's everyone wants to be on the highest high, but at the highest high, there's got to be at some point where you come down, and you don't want to be slammed down. So I think just doing the work, there's just no way around it. You have to simply do the work, and I promise you, in anything we do right, we do the work, we always see results.
Yeah.
If we don't see the results we want, then maybe we're not putting in hard enough work.
Yeah, no, I love that. It is, I'm glad you brought that up. This is why I love doing these record, these interviews and that, and talking with people that have gone through similar things or that their tools and that, because you just put it into perspective. I remember myself, and I know so many people, you can probably relate to this. You go up and down, you got these big ups and then you got these big lows, and the only reason you have
Mm-hmm.
big ups is because you've had a big low.
Yeah.
Because there's like, oh, I was way down there, and your mind will subconsciously see it and feel it. But the goal is not to have just continual ups. The goal is to
Mm-hmm.
lessen that yo-yo effect, because then you're not getting. I refer to it like getting hit by Mike Tyson's left hook. Nobody wants to get hit by Mike Tyson's left hook when in his heyday. It just
Yeah.
would not be fun.
Yeah.
And so it's about limiting that out and only getting tapped by the jab instead.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, no, I love that you put that into that kind of analogy and perspective. Thank you, Jerry, so much for being here. Thanks for taking your time out of your day. And one day we will have a beer or have a meal and talk
Yes.
more. Um, and for everybody listening, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure to serve you and to give these episodes to you, and we will continue to do so. And remember, just take one thing away from today. There was a lot of really good stuff. I took lots of notes. If you're watching the video, you saw me probably taking notes. And it's all about learning. I've done a lot of work on myself. I've paid thousands of dollars to people, and I probably learned more
Yeah.
from talking to people here on the podcast than all of those.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot here, and if you want more assistance, if you need more assistance, and you're like, hey, I need somebody to help keep me accountable, push me through, hold my hand, sometimes, slap me upside the head and be like, okay, come on, get back in line. Well, we've got that service. Obviously, you heard Jerry's got some of that. If you resonate with him more, our links are down in the down in the description. You can email me, Chris at knocking like the door, demon. You know where it comes from now, coaching.com, and we'll organize and we'll see what works best for you, or if there's somebody else that we feel is a better fit for you. But till next time, thanks for listening. Make sure you share this out to somebody. Like, subscribe so you get notified every time a new episode comes live. And remember, my motto is train hard, test easy, because we always getting tested. So we may as well train and be prepared for them.